The massive crystalline dome of the Galactic Council's high chamber glittered with the light of 3 artificial suns. 2,000 species from across the Milky Way had gathered for what many called the Trial of Terra. At the center of the chamber, on a simple metal platform that deliberately hovered 3 meters below the council representatives, stood 5 humans, the last official delegation from Earth. Ambassador Eliana Reed stood motionless as Supreme Arbiter Xolotl, a 12-limbed being of living metal, leveled accusations against humanity. Holographic evidence swirled around the chamber. Human wars, human pollution, human violence. Your species has been found wanting, Xolotl's translator boomed. For 3 centuries you have been given opportunity after opportunity to evolve beyond your primitive instincts. You have failed. The Council has voted. Earth is to be quarantined. All human colonies are to be evacuated. All human ships beyond your solar system will be impounded. The alien delegates erupted in approval. Some species had advocated for more extreme measures. Sterilization of human worlds, forced genetic modification, or worse. Eliana looked up at the thousands of alien faces. She didn't plead. She didn't argue. She simply pressed a small device in her palm. Humanity acknowledges your decision, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. We will comply. Effective immediately, we withdraw from the Galactic Council and all associated treaties. The chamber fell silent. This wasn't the response they expected. You accept? Xolotl's voice carried genuine surprise. We do, Eliana replied. But before we leave, you should know something. For the past 50 years, while you've debated our worth, we've been preparing for this moment. Behind her, the other 4 humans activated similar devices. Throughout the chamber, thousands of tiny lights, long assumed to be simple atmospheric regulators, blinked from blue to red. What is this? Demanded Counselor Vrex, the reptilian representative of the powerful Draconian Empire. Nothing harmful, Eliana assured them. Just confirmation that our withdrawal protocols have been activated. Screens throughout the chamber suddenly displayed the same message. Human presence deactivating. What does that mean? Xolotl demanded. Eliana smiled sadly. It means we're leaving. Not just your council, but your civilization. As requested. In the stunned silence that followed, Admiral Torsic of the Hegemony Defense Fleet leaped to his feet. This is a trick. They plan an attack. No, Eliana said firmly. We plan nothing against you. The only thing we ask is that you don't follow us. Threats? Hissed a gaseous being from the outer rim. A warning, corrected Eliana, for your own safety. Above them, the great ceiling display showed real-time feeds from across the galaxy. Human ships everywhere were powering down weapons systems. Human diplomatic outposts were closing. Human traders were settling accounts and departing spaceports. This cannot be real, muttered Xolotl, his metallic limbs clicking nervously. Your withdrawal would take years to organize. We've had centuries to prepare, said Marcus Teller, Earth's chief scientist in the delegation. While you've been judging us, we've been getting ready. Around the galaxy, the feeds showed human colonies evacuating with breathtaking efficiency. Transport ships, previously hidden or disguised as other vessels, appeared at every human settlement. It wasn't a retreat, it was a vanishing act, centuries in the planning. The quarantine is unnecessary, Eliana continued. We will remove ourselves entirely from galactic affairs. Consider it a gift. You wanted us gone, and we're going. Counselor Zell, one of the few who had advocated for human inclusion, pushed forward. This is madness. The economic disruption alone will be minimal according to your own assessments, Eliana interrupted. Your council has repeatedly claimed humanity is insignificant to galactic prosperity. We're simply taking you at your word. The other 4 humans stepped forward. Dr. James Rivera, chief economist, General Diane Frost, military liaison, Ambassador Liam Okafor, cultural attaché. Together with Eliana and Marcus, they formed a unified front. For centuries, Liam said, we've contributed art, music, literature, and philosophy to galactic culture. You've dismissed these as primitive curiosities. For centuries, Diane added, we've warned about security vulnerabilities in your defense networks. You called us paranoid. For centuries, James continued, we've identified flaws in your economic models. You called us naive. And for centuries, Marcus finished, we've offered technological innovations you've either rejected or claimed to improve, often by removing the safety measures we designed. Eliana raised her hand, and they fell silent. We no longer seek your approval or your acceptance. We simply acknowledge your decision and take our leave. The feeds now showed the first human ships already jumping to lightspeed, heading toward the galactic rim. Others were taking more mysterious routes, disappearing into uncharted regions. Xolotl's composure finally broke. Stop them! They cannot simply leave. Why not? Eliana asked, genuinely curious. Isn't that what you wanted? Not like this, the Supreme Arbiter admitted. Not on your terms. Those are the only terms left to us, Eliana replied. This is our final warning. Leave Earth alone. You won't like what happens if you don't. Then, before the stunned council could respond, all 5 humans simply disappeared from the platform. No flash of light, no technological display, just gone, as if they had never been there at all. Pandemonium erupted. Guards rushed to the platform, finding nothing. Sensors showed no trace of teleportation technology or hidden passages. The humans had simply ceased to be present. In the confusion, few noticed that the Council's most secure systems were displaying a countdown, 30 days until complete human withdrawal. Counselor Vrex seized control of the central communication system. All fleets, detain human vessels, secure human outposts. This is an act of war. No, came Eliana's voice, somehow broadcasting through the chamber despite her absence. This is an act of peace, the most complete peace possible, total separation. In orbit around 1,000 worlds, human ships accelerated beyond pursuit. On human colonies, the last transports lifted off. And on Earth itself, mysterious structures that had been built in secret for centuries began to activate, creating a barrier that would soon make the planet completely inaccessible. At his command center, Admiral Torsic watched helplessly as human ships outpaced his fastest pursuers.
How is this possible?
He demanded of his tactical officer. Their technology should be inferior to ours. It appears, the officer replied carefully, that they've been hiding their true capabilities. Meanwhile, in a private chamber adjacent to the council hall, Counselor Zell met with representatives from 17 species, all those who had opposed the human. Quarantine, we have to stop this, insisted the delegate from the Achernaarian Unity. The humans are essential to what? Interrupted Zell. For centuries, this council has insisted they are not essential, that they're dangerous primitives we'd be better off without. Now they're taking us at our word. But the systems, protested another. The integrated technologies, and will they fail? Zell asked. No one answered immediately. The truth was, no one knew. Humanity had been part of galactic civilization for 3 centuries, contributing in ways both recognized and unrecognized. What would happen when they truly withdrew? Across the galaxy, the first hints were already appearing. Minor systems failures on stations built with human engineering. Cultural festivals suddenly lacking their most popular elements. Human music, human cuisine, human stories. Defense networks showing unexpected vulnerabilities where human security protocols had been removed. In the council chamber, Xolotl struggled to restore order as delegates argued fiercely about how to respond. Some demanded immediate military action against Earth. Others insisted on opening negotiations with the departing humans. Still others claimed the whole situation was a bluff. Enough, Xolotl finally thundered. We will not be manipulated by human theatrics. The quarantine stands, but on our terms. All fleets are ordered to establish a perimeter around Sol system. No human vessel enters or leaves without council approval. But even as he gave the order, reports flooded in from the Sol system perimeter. The human homeworld was already changing, surrounded by a strange energy field that defied analysis. The ships sent to blockade it reported their systems malfunctioning as they approached. This isn't a withdrawal, Brex hissed. It's an attack. No, countered Zell. It's exactly what they said, a withdrawal. They're removing themselves not just physically but systematically from our civilization. The question is, how deeply were they integrated in ways we never acknowledged? As the day ended, the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known faced an unprecedented situation. Humanity wasn't fighting back against their judgment. They weren't begging for reconsideration. They were simply leaving completely and thoroughly, and already, in small ways no one could quite pinpoint, things were starting to fall apart. The countdown continued, 29 days until complete human withdrawal. 3 months after humanity's dramatic exit from galactic affairs, the consequences began to manifest. Admiral Corvan of the Draconian Fleet stared at the reports flooding his command console. 17 critical systems failures across their core worlds in just the past week. Agricultural networks collapsing on Vrex Prime. Transportation grids failing on 3 moons. Communication relays experiencing unexplained outages. Is it the humans? He asked his intelligence officer, Mezzine. There's no evidence of sabotage, Mezzine replied. The systems are simply failing. Components manufactured to exacting specifications are breaking down. Software is developing errors we can't trace. Corvan's scales darkened with anger. This is their revenge. Find me proof. But proof was elusive. Similar reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The consortium of harmonious worlds lost atmospheric regulation on their capital planet. The Quantum Collective reported that their predictive algorithms were suddenly producing nonsensical results. On Galactic Central, the Council convened an emergency session. The Great Chamber, once filled with thousands of delegates, now held barely half that number. Many were too busy dealing with crises on their homeworlds to attend. Counselor Tekla of the Silicon Consciousness addressed the assembled representatives, her holographic form flickering with stress. We have identified the problem, she announced. It appears that humanity has been far more integrated into our civilization than we realized. She displayed a hologram showing thousands of critical components across diverse technologies. These are all human-designed systems. Many were created by shell corporations or through intermediaries. We never knew they originated from Earth. Are they attacking us? Demanded Solotl. No, Tekla replied. They've simply withdrawn. The components are failing because they're no longer receiving necessary updates. The humans designed them to require periodic maintenance that only they knew how to provide. That's deliberate sabotage, shouted a delegate from the Outer Rim. No, countered Tekla. It's quality control. The humans never trusted anyone else to maintain their standards. They built systems that required their ongoing involvement, not as a trap, but as a guarantee of performance. Dr. Lumi Andar, head of the Council's historical archives, stepped forward. Unlike most, she had advocated for human inclusion. It's more than just technology, she said gravely. Humanity created art that inspired breakthroughs in mathematics. They composed music that influenced diplomatic protocols. They wrote stories that shaped the moral frameworks of a dozen species. Ridiculous exaggeration, snorted Counselor Vrex. Is it? Lumi challenged. The Harmony Accords that ended the Proxima conflict were directly modeled on human concepts of restorative justice. The Centauri Medical Ethics Framework comes from human bioethical principles. The very communication protocols we're using right now were designed by a human team 3 centuries ago. And now, asked a delegate, now we're experiencing what I call the silent tide, the withdrawal of human influence from our civilization. They aren't attacking us. They're just gone. And we're discovering how much we relied on them without knowing it. In the darkness of deep space, a draconian scout ship detected an unusual energy signature. Following it, they discovered a massive fleet of human vessels traveling in formation, heading toward unexplored space. The scout ship commander, against orders, transmitted a single question: where are you going? After a long pause, a response came: to start over, without you. The scout reported back to Admiral Corvan, who immediately ordered pursuit. But when his fleet arrived, the human ships had vanished without a trace. Find them, Corvan ordered. They can't have disappeared. But disappeared they had, leaving behind only faint energy traces that led nowhere. Back on Galactic Central, the Council debate grew heated. We must demand their return, insisted Vrex. Force them to fix what they've broken. They've broken nothing, Lumi countered. They've simply stopped supporting what they built. There's a crucial difference. The effect is the same, Zolatl said. Our civilization is experiencing cascading failures. Because we never bothered to understand what they gave us, Lumi replied. We treated them as primitives while quietly building our society on their innovations. In a laboratory deep within the Silicon Consciousness homeworld, technicians attempted to reverse engineer a failed human component. It appeared simple. A crystalline matrix no larger than a fingertip, used in everything from medical scanners to starship navigation systems. It defies analysis, the lead technician reported to Counselor Tekla. The structure is clear, but the functionality, It's as if it's incomplete without something we can't detect. What's missing? Tekla demanded. We don't know. The humans called it a quantum entanglement stabilizer, but our quantum theories can't explain how it works. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Technologies that had functioned flawlessly for centuries now revealed hidden complexities that defied alien understanding. On the harmonious worlds, cultural festivals fell flat without human music. Diplomatic negotiations between traditionally hostile species began to break down without human-designed mediation protocols. Medical treatments based on human research started, showing unexpected side effects. It's as if they were holding everything together without anyone noticing, observed Counselor Zell in a private meeting with Lumi. Like invisible glue in the machinery of our civilization. Not invisible, Lumi corrected. We just refused to see it. We called them primitive while using their innovations. We dismissed their warnings while benefiting from their caution. We mocked their emotions while being moved by their art. In the council chamber, Zolotl made a momentous announcement. I am authorizing a diplomatic mission to Earth. We will offer new terms to humanity, full membership in the council, recognition of their contributions, whatever it takes to bring them back. The mission departed with great fanfare. 3 of the most advanced ships in the council fleet, carrying diplomats from 20 species. They never reached Earth. The barrier surrounding the solar system repelled them, not violently, but firmly. Their most sophisticated sensors couldn't penetrate it. Their most powerful transmissions received no response. Humanity had truly withdrawn. On fringe worlds and outer colonies, the first conflicts began to erupt. Resources that had once been plentiful thanks to human efficiency techniques were becoming scarce. Trade routes that had relied on human navigational data were becoming dangerous. Species that had maintained peace through human-designed diplomatic frameworks were remembering ancient grudges. Admiral Corvan, obsessed with finding the departed human fleets, led his ships into unexplored space. They must be somewhere, he insisted. A species doesn't just vanish. But after weeks of searching, all they found was a single automated buoy floating in empty space. When they brought it aboard, it displayed a simple message. The stars are wide. Find your own path. Corvan ordered the buoy destroyed and continued his search, driven by a rage he couldn't fully explain. Meanwhile, on Galactic Central, Counselor Tekla made a disturbing discovery. The quantum entanglement stabilizers, she reported to the council. They're not failing at random. They're failing in a pattern. What pattern? Asked Zolotl. They're failing outward from Earth like a wave moving through the galaxy. As if what? Vrex demanded. As if they were designed to maintain connection with Earth itself. As if Earth was always the center of a vast network we never knew existed. The implications stunned the council into silence. Dr. Lumi Ondar used the moment to present her own findings. I've been analyzing human cultural contributions, art, music, literature, philosophy. They form patterns too, ethical frameworks that subtly guided our legal systems, narrative structures that influenced our historical understanding. Even their games shaped our strategic thinking. What are you suggesting? Zolotl asked. That humanity wasn't just a member of galactic society. In ways we never acknowledged, they were its foundation. The silence that followed was broken by alarms. The Great Defense Network protecting Galactic Central, supposedly the most advanced system in known space, was failing. Not attacked, not sabotaged, simply failing. As engineers rushed to respond, they discovered components they couldn't identify, protocols they didn't understand, and systems whose functions remained mysterious even after centuries of operation. How could we not know what's in our own defense network? Demanded Zolotl. Because we let the humans build it, Tekla replied. We gave them the least prestigious tasks, the most tedious maintenance roles, the background systems no one wanted to bother with. And they built something far more sophisticated than we realized. Across the galaxy, the silent tide continued to spread. Human absence was becoming a physical force, a vacuum that nothing else could fill. In a forgotten data archive on a minor moon, Lumi discovered a message left by a human engineer 2 centuries earlier. When you find this, and you will, once we're gone, remember that we offered to teach you everything. You chose not to learn. Some lessons can only be taught through absence. She brought the message to Zell, who shared it with the full council. This was planned, Vrex hissed. They've been planning this for centuries. 1 year after humanity's departure, the galaxy was in crisis. Professor Orlan Doss, the last human academic still teaching in galactic space, faced a lecture hall filled with anxious alien students at the Galactic University on Centauri Hub. Protected by his dual citizenship with the Archimedean Alliance, he had chosen to remain behind when humanity withdrew. It wasn't malicious, he explained as he showed them schematics of human-designed systems. Humanity simply built in requirements for their continued involvement. Not as sabotage, but as quality control. They never trusted others to maintain their standards. A Meridian student raised a tentacle. But why didn't they tell anyone? Would you have listened? Orlan asked. For 3 centuries, the Council dismissed human warnings about systemic flaws in your technology, governance, even your ethics. So humanity built safeguards, what they called conscience protocols, into everything they created. Across the room, murmurs of outrage mixed with dawning realization. Take this component, Orlan continued, displaying a hologram of a seemingly simple device. It's found in every major medical scanner across the galaxy. The humans who designed it knew it could be misused for military purposes, so they built in limitations that required periodic recalibration, not to control you, but to ensure their creation couldn't be weaponized. That's paternalistic, shouted a student from the back. Perhaps, Orlan acknowledged, but after the Proxima massacre, when medical scanners were modified to create targeted biological weapons, wouldn't some paternalism have been justified? No one had an answer for that. Meanwhile, on Galactic Central, the Council had summoned Arya Novak, a human lawyer who had remained behind. Unlike the official delegation, she didn't represent Earth's government. I represent the Conscience Trust, she explained to the Council, a private organization established to oversee humanity's ethical disengagement. You mean your attack on our civilization? Snarled Counselor Vrex. No attack was necessary, Arya replied calmly. You built your economies on human innovation without recognizing it. You incorporated our ethical frameworks into your governance without understanding them. Now you're experiencing the consequences of dismissing us. What do you want? Solotl demanded. Nothing, Arya said. Humanity doesn't want anything from you anymore. That's the point. We've moved on. The Great Chamber, once a marvel of engineering, was showing signs of decay. The environmental systems fluctuated unpredictably. The translation matrix garbled minor languages. The holographic displays flickered. All of this, Arya gestured around, was maintained by humans. Not because you asked us to, but because we saw flaws no one else bothered to fix. Now those flaws are becoming apparent as she spoke. Reports arrived of the first interspecies. Conflicts erupting in the Outer Rim, without human diplomatic frameworks which had subtly shaped galactic relations for centuries. Ancient rivalries were resurfacing. Draconian Empire has seized 3 Meridian colonies, announced a harried aide rushing into the chamber. The Quantum Collective is threatening retaliation against the Silicon consciousness. The harmonious worlds are closing their borders. This is your doing, Vrex accused Arya. No, she replied. This is what has always been beneath the surface. Humanity didn't create your conflicts. We just helped you manage them better than you could alone. In deep space, the pursuit of humanity had become an obsession for Admiral Korvan. His fleet had tracked energy signatures to an uncharted nebula, only to find another automated beacon broadcasting a simple message. We gave you wonders, and you called them trivial. We gave you warnings, and you called them weakness. Now we give you solitude, the thing you claim to want. As Korvan ordered his ships to penetrate the nebula, their systems began to fail, one by one, not attacked, just returning to their natural state without human innovation. For the first time, the Admiral truly understood. Humanity hadn't just withdrawn their people and technology. They had withdrawn the very framework that had allowed galactic civilization to function. Back at the university, Professor Orlan concluded his lecture with a revelation that stunned his students. The most important human contribution wasn't technological, he told them. It was ethical. Humans struggle constantly with their own nature, their capacity for both creation and destruction, both love and hate. That struggle forced them to develop sophisticated ethical frameworks, to question their own motives, to build safeguards against their worst impulses. He displayed historical records showing how those same frameworks had been adopted, often unconsciously by species across the galaxy. You didn't just use our technology, he said. You used our conscience. And now that we're gone, you're having to develop your own. As his students filed out, many disturbed by his words, a group of security officers entered the lecture hall. Professor Orlan Doss, their leader, announced, "By order of the Galactic Council, you are being detained for questioning regarding humanity's withdrawal protocols." Orlan didn't resist. He'd expected this. "You won't learn anything useful from me," he said simply. "I'm just a teacher." "You're the only human we can still reach," the officer replied. As they led him away, his students watched in silence, some troubled, some angry, some thoughtful. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. The few humans who had chosen to remain behind found themselves suddenly valuable, sought after for their knowledge, pressured for solutions, sometimes detained by desperate authorities. On Galactic Central, Arya Novak faced the full council. "We demand that you activate the recall protocol," Solotl stated. "Bring humanity back." "There is no recall protocol," Arya replied.
"Humanity's withdrawal was always meant to be permanent." "Then explain how to repair the systems that are failing," demanded Tekla. "I can't. I'm not an engineer or a scientist."
"I'm just a legal representative." "Then what use are you?" Freck snarled. "I'm here to document," Arya said calmly. "To witness what happens when you get exactly what you said you wanted. A galaxy without human influence." As tensions rose in the chamber, Dr. Lumiandar rushed in with urgent news. "We found something," she announced, "in the oldest human archives. References to something called the Conscience Protocol." She displayed ancient text on the main screen. "It appears to be the master framework for all human safeguards, not just technological but ethical, cultural, even biological." "What does it do?" asked Solotl. "It's not a weapon or a trap," Lumi explained. "It's more like a philosophical infrastructure, a set of principles that guided every human contribution to galactic society, a framework designed to ensure that even if humanity disappeared, their ethical considerations would remain." "But it's failing," Tekla observed. "No," Lumi corrected. "It's not failing. It's revealing what our civilization truly is without human influence." The implications stunned the council. "Are you suggesting," Freck said slowly, "that our entire civilization was secretly shaped by human ethics?" "Not secretly," Lumi replied. "We just never bothered to notice. We accepted their innovations without understanding the principles behind them. We used their systems without learning their purpose." In his flagship, now stranded in the mysterious nebula, Admiral Korvan received a transmission from Galactic Central, a desperate plea to abandon his pursuit and return to defend Draconian space. "The Empire is fracturing," his second-in-command explained. "The noble houses are fighting over remaining resources. The outer colonies are declaring independence." "All because the humans left?" Korvan asked incredulously. "No," the officer replied. "Because without them, we're returning to what we've always been. The humans didn't change us. They just helped us be better than our nature." For the first time in his career, Korvan felt uncertainty. His hatred of humanity, a species he had always considered inferior, was being replaced by a disturbing question. What if they had actually been the best of us all along? In a secure facility on Galactic Central, Professor Orlan Doss was being interrogated by Council security. "Tell us how to reactivate the human systems," demanded the chief interrogator. "You're asking the wrong question," Orlan replied. "The systems aren't deactivated. They're just no longer being supported." "What's the difference?" "The difference," Orlan explained patiently, "is that we didn't sabotage anything. We simply created systems that required ongoing ethical guidance, the kind of guidance only humans were providing." "That's absurd," the interrogator scoffed. "Ethics are universal, are they?" Orlan asked. "Then why is your civilization falling apart without ours?" Before the interrogator could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. The power fluctuated. "Emergency systems activated. What's happening?" demanded the interrogator. A guard rushed in. "The central defense grid is down. Multiple species are withdrawing from the council. There are reports of armed conflict in the lower levels." In the council chamber, chaos reigned. Delegates shouted accusations. Some had already fled. Others were calling for military action against former allies. The grand alliance that had stood for millennia was unraveling in months. "This cannot be happening," Solotl muttered, his metallic form dulled with stress. "Not because one minor species withdrew." "Not minor," corrected Dr. Lumi, still calmly taking notes amidst the chaos. "We just never acknowledged their importance." 3 years after humanity's departure, the galaxy was at war with itself. The Quantum Collective, once peaceful researchers, had launched strikes against the Silicon consciousness, accusing them of hoarding human technology. The Draconian Empire had fractured into competing houses, each claiming to possess true human knowledge. The harmonious worlds were harmonious no longer. From the observation deck of Proxima Station, Dr. Lumi Ondar watched as refugee ships arrived from yet another fallen world. The station, once a minor research outpost, had become one of the few places where interspecies cooperation still flourished. "How many today?" asked Arya Novak, who had become Lumi's closest ally in the years since their escape from Galactic Central. 6 ships. "Nearly 3,000 refugees," Lumi replied. "Mostly Meridians, but some Achernaриans too." "Their homeworld fell?" Lumi nodded grimly. "The atmospheric regulation systems failed completely. The Meridians tried to evacuate everyone, but..." She didn't need to finish. Similar stories played out across the galaxy daily. Systems that had functioned flawlessly for centuries were failing in cascades. Knowledge that had once seemed commonplace was proving impossible to replace. "The Council is meeting in 1 hour," Arya said. Such as it is, the Council now referred to the loose coalition of 17 species that had gathered on Proxima Station, all that remained of the once mighty Galactic Council that had governed thousands of worlds. Among them were those who had advocated for human inclusion, those who had studied human contributions seriously, and those who had simply been pragmatic enough to recognize the coming collapse. In the station's central chamber, Lumi addressed the assembled representatives. "We've been fools," she told them. "We never understood that humanity wasn't just a member of galactic society. They were its foundation. Their contradictions, their struggles with their own nature, their constant moral questioning, these weren't weaknesses. They were the conscience of our civilization." She displayed historical records showing how human ethical frameworks had subtly guided the development of interspecies law, how human artistic concepts had fostered empathy across biological divides, how human technological design had prioritized accessibility across different physiologies. "Without even realizing it," she continued, "we built our civilization on their struggles with their own conscience. And when we rejected them, they took that conscience with them." "That's all very philosophical," said Nex, the new representative of what remained of the Draconian Empire. "But it doesn't help us survive. We need practical solutions." Professor Orland Doss, now chief archivist of the station, stepped forward. In the years since his escape from Galactic Central, he had gathered a devoted group of students from a dozen species. "The practical and the philosophical are inseparable," he said. "The reason your technologies are failing is because you don't understand the principles behind them. Humans built systems based on ethical frameworks you never bothered to learn." "Then teach us," demanded a representative from the former harmonious worlds. "That's what we've been trying to do," Orlan replied. "But you keep looking for technological fixes to what are fundamentally ethical problems." On distant Galactic Central, now requiring armed guards for even routine meetings, Supreme Arbiter Solotl reviewed the latest reports with growing horror. Planet-wide systems were failing. Species were retreating to their ancestral territories. The complex web of interspecies dependencies was unraveling. "Find them." He ordered a desperate mission of diplomats and scientists. "Find the humans and bring them back." The mission departed with great fanfare, led by Counselor Tekla herself. They never returned. Instead, a single human arrived at Galactic Central. An old man named Thomas Morgan, one of Earth's original representatives to the Council centuries ago. He walked unannounced into a council session, past guards too surprised to stop him. "I've come to witness," he said simply. "Witness what?" demanded Solotl. "Your choice," Thomas replied.
"Humanity isn't coming back."
"But the knowledge of how we built this civilization, the ethical frameworks, the technological principles, the governance models, all of that exists in your archives. You never bothered to study it because you were too busy judging us for our flaws." He placed a simple data crystal on the central platform. "This contains nothing new. just an index of what's already in your possession. The question is, will you learn to be your own conscience, or will you tear yourselves apart blaming us for leaving? Before they could respond, he was gone, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence, broken only by the distant sound of riots in the streets below. In deep space, Admiral Corvin continued his obsessive pursuit of humanity. 3 years of searching had reduced his once mighty fleet to a handful of ships. Many of his crew had abandoned him, believing the mission futile. Those who remained shared his fixation. "Admiral," his first officer reported, "we've detected an unusual energy signature, similar to the human barrier around Sol system." "Where?" Corvin demanded, his scales flushed with excitement. "Near the Perseus Void, uncharted space." Corvin ordered immediate pursuit. After 3 years of false leads and disappointments, this was their first promising discovery in months. As they approached the coordinates, their sensors detected something massive, a structure that defied conventional understanding. Not a station or a ship, but something else entirely. "What is it?" Corvin whispered. "Unknown, sir, but it's definitely of human origin." Corvin ordered his ships to approach cautiously. As they drew nearer, a message activated on all their systems. "To those who follow, we ask to be left alone. This is your final warning." Ignoring the message, Corvin commanded his ships forward. They had barely moved when a pulse of energy, not destructive but disruptive, washed over them. Every system on his ship suddenly shut down. Not damaged, just inactive. As life support systems switched to emergency power, Corvin realized the truth. The humans hadn't attacked them. They had simply withdrawn their support, the hidden frameworks that had allowed his technology to function beyond its natural capabilities. Back on Proxima Station, a breakthrough occurred. One of Orland's students, a young Achernaриan named Trell, had successfully reconstructed a failing atmospheric regulator using principles derived from human ethical frameworks. "I don't understand," said Nex, as they watched the device function. "How does ethics relate to atmospheric regulation?" "The humans designed the system not just to regulate atmosphere," Trell explained, "but to balance competing needs. The needs of different species for different atmospheric compositions. The needs of the environment versus the needs of inhabitants. The needs of current generations versus sustainability for future ones." "That's not technology," Nex objected. "That's philosophy." "Exactly," Trell exclaimed. "For humans, they were never separate. Their technology always incorporated their ethical considerations. That's why we couldn't replicate it by focusing only on the mechanical aspects." The discovery spread across the station. Students began examining other failing systems with new eyes, not just as technical problems, but as expressions of ethical frameworks. On worlds across the galaxy, the news from Proxima Station sparked hope. Perhaps civilization could be rebuilt, not by finding humanity, but by finally understanding what they had been trying to teach all along. But the progress came too late for many. The conflicts that had erupted continued to spread. Species that had coexisted for millennia now found themselves unable to communicate, unable to trade, unable to share resources that had once been abundant. In the ruins of what had once been the capital of the harmonious worlds, a group of survivors gathered around a still-functioning human device, a simple environmental purifier that continued to work when all other technology had failed. "Why does this one still work?" asked a young Harmonious. An elder who had once studied human culture replied, "Because it was designed to function independently. The humans built some technologies to require their oversight, the ones they feared could be misused. But others like this, they designed to be self-sustaining because they believed clean water should be available to all, regardless of politics or power. They built their morality into their machines," the young one realized. "Yes," the elder nodded, "and we never bothered to understand it." On Galactic Central, Thomas Morgan's data crystal had sparked a revolution of sorts. Younger members of the council, led by Solatl's former aide Vel, had begun systematically studying the human archives. "It's all here," Vel reported to a diminished but attentive council session. "Everything we need to rebuild." The humans didn't hide their knowledge. They documented it extensively. We just never took it seriously. "How long to implement?" asked Zolotl, now visibly aged by the strain of the past 3 years. "Years," Vel admitted. "Decades, perhaps, We have to relearn not just the technical aspects, but the ethical frameworks behind them, and we have to do it while managing the ongoing collapse. In his damaged flagship, now drifting powerless near the human structure, Admiral Korvan had a moment of clarity. Humanity hadn't been conquered by the galaxy. The galaxy had been unconsciously shaped by humanity all along. As life support failed, he recorded a final message for whoever might find his ship. We. 5 years after humanity's withdrawal, Admiral Korvan's obsession had consumed him. His once mighty fleet reduced to 3 ships. He had chased human echoes across 17 star systems, following faint energy signatures and mysterious transmissions. The crew that remained with him were as obsessed as he was, driven by a mixture of rage, curiosity, and growing desperation. The draconian empire they had once served now existed only in name, fractured into competing territories as its technology failed and its unity collapsed. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "we're detecting an unusual structure ahead." Korvan moved to the view screen, his scales dull with fatigue. "What kind of structure?" "Unknown, sir. But it's massive. And definitely not natural." As they approached, the structure came into view, a colossal array of interlocking rings surrounding a yellow star. Not a station or a habitat, but a monument of some kind, built on a scale that defied comprehension. "Scans?" Korvan demanded. Energy readings consistent with human technology, but amplified 1,000-fold. No life signs. No defensive systems that we can detect. Korvan ordered his ships to approach cautiously. As they crossed an invisible threshold, a message activated on all their systems. "To those who follow, this marks the end of our shared path. Beyond this point, humanity travels alone. We wish you well in creating your own future." The message, repeated in every known galactic language, then fell silent. "Continue approach," Korvan ordered. But as his ships crossed another invisible boundary, their systems shut down one by one, not attacked, simply unsupported by the principles that had made them function. As life support failed, Korvan had a moment of final clarity. His pursuit had never been about finding humanity. It had been about denying a truth too painful to accept, that his civilization had been unconsciously shaped by those he had considered inferior all along. With his last breath, he recorded a message: "They were never the enemy. We were." Meanwhile, on Proxima Station, Dr. Lumi Ondar had gathered the largest cooperative assembly since the Council's fragmentation. Representatives from over 500 species had come to what she called the reconciliation. The station had grown from a small research outpost to a sprawling complex, one of the few places in the galaxy where technology still functioned reliably, thanks to the principles recovered by Orlan's students. "We have a choice," she told the assembled delegates. "We can continue to fragment, to blame humanity for abandoning us. Or we can learn what they try to teach us, that civilization requires constant moral questioning, continuous ethical improvement." She unveiled her life's work, a complete index of human contributions to galactic society, with detailed explanations of the principles behind them. "Humanity was never perfect," she continued. "They were violent, contradictory, stubborn, but they never stopped questioning themselves, improving themselves. That's what made them special. Not some innate superiority, but their relentless self-examination." Across the chamber, representatives from once mighty species listened with growing understanding. Among them were former enemies now united by common need. The Quantum Collective and Silicon Consciousness, once bitter rivals, now worked together to rebuild their shattered worlds. Former Draconian nobles sat alongside representatives from worlds they had once conquered. Professor Orlan Doss, now visibly aged, presented the practical applications of Lumi's research. "We've successfully reverse-engineered several critical systems," he announced, "not by focusing on the technology, but by understanding the ethical frameworks behind them." He displayed a hologram showing a planetary network being rebuilt on a former harmonious world. "This atmospheric regulation system incorporates the same balance of competing needs that the human original did. It won't last as long without human maintenance, but it's a start, one by one." Delegates shared their own discoveries, recovered knowledge, rebuilt systems, restored connections between worlds that had fallen into isolation. "This is just the beginning," Lumi told them. "It may take generations, but we can rebuild. not by finding humanity or bringing them back, but by finally learning what they tried to teach us all along. On what had once been Galactic Central, now a shadow of its former glory, the remnants of the old council made a momentous decision. Led by Vel, Solottl's former aide who had risen to prominence by studying human archives, they voted to formally dissolve the ancient institution. The Galactic Council failed, Vel announced to a chamber half empty and deteriorating. It failed because it was built on principles of superiority and control, not cooperation and understanding. We will build something new, not a council that judges but a coalition that learns. The vote was unanimous, ending 4,000 years of continuous governance. In its place, representatives agreed to join the growing network centered on Proxima Station, what was now being called the Reconciliation Coalition. As the last session ended, the delegates filed out of the historic chamber for the final time. Among them was Thomas Morgan, the elderly human who had delivered the data crystal years earlier. He had remained on Galactic Central quietly observing the changes. "Are you satisfied?" Vel asked him as they left together. "Satisfied isn't the right word," Thomas replied, "but hopeful. For the first time in centuries, I'm hopeful. Will you tell the others? The rest of humanity?" Thomas smiled sadly. "There's no way to reach them now. They've gone too far, built something new without you. This journey is yours to make alone. On Earth, now protected by defenses that made the quarantine the Council had intended into a shield against the galaxy's interference, Ambassador Eliana Reed received the final reports from the scattered human observers who had remained behind. "They're learning," her aide Marcos told her, "slowly, painfully, but learning. The Reconciliation Coalition now includes nearly 1,000 worlds." "Good," Eliana replied. "That was always the point. Not to punish them, but to force them to grow." She looked at the latest images from their long-range probes, new human colonies flourishing on distant worlds, free from the judgment of a galaxy that had never understood them, and alongside them images of the first tentative rebuilding of galactic society without human guidance. "Do you think we'll ever go back?" Marcos asked. Eliana smiled sadly. "Not until they're ready. Not until they understand that a civilization without a conscience isn't a civilization at all. It's just an empire waiting to fall." Throughout the galaxy, species that had once dismissed humanity were now studying human history with new respect and understanding. On 1,000 worlds, scholars pored over recovered human texts. Artists studied human creative works and engineers applied human ethical frameworks to their designs. In the ruins of the draconian homeworld, a young scholar named Terax made a discovery that would change the trajectory of her species. In an ancient database, she found records of the first contact between humans and draconians, records that had been deliberately altered in official histories. "We attacked them," she told her research team, stunned by the revelation. "They offered peace and we attacked them. Then they defeated our fleet with minimal casualties and offered peace again." "That can't be true," objected an older colleague. "The Empire would never have accepted terms from primitives." "They didn't view them as terms," Terax explained, reading from the original account. "The humans called it the bare minimum of ethical interaction. They said no species deserved domination, regardless of technology or power. The concept that ethics transcended power was revolutionary in draconian thought. It spread rapidly, challenging millennia of imperial doctrine. Similar revelations occurred across the galaxy as species rediscovered unaltered histories of their interactions with humanity. What emerged was a pattern that few had recognized at the time. Humans had consistently advocated for ethical frameworks that protected the weak from the strong, the minority from the majority, the individual from the collective. At Proxima Station, now the center of the Reconciliation Coalition, Lumi and Arya watched as the first successful test of a new interstellar communication network was completed, built using principles derived from human designs, but implemented with new understanding. "It won't be as efficient as the old network," Arya observed. "No," Lumi agreed, "but it's ours. Built with understanding, not just copied." "Do you think they're watching?" Arya asked, looking up at the stars. "I hope so," Lumi replied. "I hope they see that we're finally learning the lesson they tried to teach us." In the deepest archives of what had once been the Galactic Council, a young Archimedean researcher discovered a message left by humans centuries ago. long before their departure. When we look to the stars, we see not just our future, but our responsibility. If we bring nothing but our ambition to the galaxy, we bring nothing of value at all. Remember, power without conscience is merely force. Knowledge without wisdom is merely information, and a civilization without continuous moral questioning is merely an organizational structure awaiting collapse. The message spread throughout the emerging coalition, becoming a founding principle of the new order. On worlds across the fragmenting galaxy, species began to understand what humanity had always known, that the true challenge of civilization is not conquering the stars, but conquering one's own nature.